Hi everyone, this is Amara with my channel Eyes Wide Shut. This is part 2. I've done part 1 already. This is part 2 on can we live without bees? Can we live without bees? We don't seem to realize just how important bees are, and you're going to find that a little bit more in this second video. Right, what are pollinators? Because bees are pollinators. What is meant by pollination? Pollination is a transfer of pollen from the male part of a flower, the anther, spelled A-N-T-H-E-R, anther, to the female part, the stigma, that's S-T-I-G-M-A, if you want to go check it out, allowing fertilization to occur. This process is essential for plants to produce seeds and reproduce. Right, types of pollination. Self-pollination, pollen moves within the same flower or between flowers on the same plant. Cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is transfer between flowers of different plants, increasing genetic diversity. Right, things that are pollinators. Pollinators are things such as insects, bees, butterflies, and beetles. As examples, birds, such as hummingbirds, wind, such as grass and trees, okay? Wind, which is created and spreads between grass and trees. Water is also important. Without pollination, many plants would not be able to reproduce, affecting the food production and the ecosystem. It's a small process with a huge impact. Now, I noticed in the UK, and it's not just me, but scientists have noticed that since 2020, we've had a decline in the number of bees. And we have quite a few different species of bees in the UK. And it's probably the same for different countries around the world. But our bee, now, without our bees, we wouldn't have things such as our food. And there's a lot of other things that also rely on bees, okay? Because we live in an ecosystem. And so one thing depends on another, okay? So whilst we depend on bees to pollinate flowers, right? When these things grow, fruits and flowers, other animals depend on the fruits and flowers for them to be able to stay alive. So bees are exceptionally important. Now, it's believed that Einstein was supposed to say that within 4 years of bees dying out, that we as a species, as a human species, that we would die out too. Okay, that within 4 years of bees dying out, we would die out too, and so would a lot of other things such as animals and plants and vegetation. But apparently it wasn't Einstein who actually said this. It was actually Einstein who said this. Okay, so where did this come from? Right, I asked co-pilot, did Albert Einstein say that if bees died out, we would die out within 4 years? And co-pilot said, no, there's no solid evidence that Albert Einstein ever said this. The quote, which claims that humanity would only survive for 4 years if bees disappeared, has been widely attributed to him, but researchers have found no record of him making such a statement. The earliest known connection between Einstein and this idea appeared in a French Nature magazine in 1965, 10 years after his death. 10 years after Einstein's death. The concept itself, however, has been discussed by scientists and environmentalists as bees play a crucial role in pollination and food production. Right, so who made this quote? That the human race would die out if bee population died out. Right, so who made this quote? Okay, this is what I asked Copilot, and this is the reply. The quote about humanity perishing within 4 years if bees disappeared is often misattributed with Albert Einstein, but there's no evidence he ever said it. The idea itself has been around for quite some time. The earliest known reference to a similar sentiment comes from Maurice Maeterlinck. I'll spell that out just in case you want to go and try and find this guy. Maurice is spelled Maurice, and his surname is Maeterlinck, a Belgian writer. In his 1901 book, Life of Bees, the specific claim linking Einstein to the quote seems to have originated in a French Nature magazine in 1965, a decade after Einstein's death. Over time, the statement gained traction, especially amongst environmental activists and beekeepers, raising awareness about the importance of pollinators. Okay, so when I done my first video and asked this Copilot about whether it's true that if bees were to die out, the human race would die out, it seemed to be saying yes, we would die out, and not only us but other species. But now, like when I've asked this Copilot again, it seems to be saying something slightly different, that certain species may die out, or certain plants may die out, but the human race would not die out because we are able to adapt. We are able to adapt. But think about it. We depend so much on our foods, okay? We depend on things such as our cows for milk or for meat. We depend on our pigs, okay? We depend on our chickens for food, yeah? For meat or for eggs. And there's a whole heap of other things. We depend on our apples. We depend on our oranges. We depend on our grapes, our bananas, our potatoes, our carrots, our onions. We depend on all of these things, right? But if these things start to die out because of lack of pollination, and as we say, it's not just bees that pollinate, there's other insects and creatures also, yeah, that pollinate. But my concentration is on bees at the moment. So if bees were to die out or reduce the numbers as we're seeing, then doesn't that mean that certain species of plants and animals who also depend on them will start to die out too? If they die out, it's like a casserole system, okay? It's like a cascading effect. So if one thing dies out, the next thing that depends on it will die out, and that next thing that depends on that next thing will die out, and so forth and so forth. Okay? So bees are extremely important, okay, to us. But there's some people who don't take this into consideration. Let me drink some water a minute. Let me drink some water. Anyway, ask Copilot something else about who would be the first casualties. Okay? Who would be the first casualties? So, listen. Animals at risk. Herbivores such as deer, rabbits, and other plant-eating animals would lose food sources. Many insects rely on nectar and pollen, leading to population decline. Birds and small mammals, okay? Species that feed on insects and plants will be affected. humans, while we wouldn't go extinct, and I'll say it again, this is what this article by Copilot, okay, is saying, which is slightly different slant from the last time when I did my first video. What it seems to be saying here is human beings, while we wouldn't go extinct, food shortages and economic instability would be a major concern, or would be of major concerns. The loss of bees would cascade through the ecosystems. You hear that? And listen again carefully. The loss of bees would cascade through the ecosystems, affecting everything from soil health to predators prey relationships. Other pollinators like butterflies and birds would help, but they couldn't fully replace bees. And I'll say it again, other pollinators like butterflies and birds would help, but they couldn't fully replace bees. Bees are so paramount. So paramount, people. Okay? Now, if we're relying on bees for our food sources, such as plants and other animals, if they start to die out, that means there's going to be a scarcity, right? Think about it. That means that there's going to be a scarcity. And when there's scarcity, if we notice with our economic system, not our ecosystem, our economic system, what happens? Everything starts to go up in price as there's a shortage. So food will start to go up in price. Food will start to go up in price. Your grains and your rice and your apples, your berries and all of those things, they'll go up in price because as there's a shortage, as there's a food shortage, these things will become scarce. So there's other economists, the shops will start to ask for more money because they'll pass the cost on to the consumers. They'll start to pass the cost on to consumers. Okay? And another thing is, if there is a food shortage, people will eventually start to die out because there's less food. Think about it. People will start to die out because there'll be less food. There'll be fights in the street. People will be robbing each other. I don't think people's reconsidered this, taking these things into consideration. If there's shortages of food, people will start to rob each other for food. Yeah, there'll be violence on the street. People will want to find food to be able to feed their family and themselves. So this has a knock-on effect, a cascading effect. Let me drink some more water. Another thing that we need to consider, right, is 5G. 5G, that came up in 2020. Is there a relationship between this 5G, okay, this 5G technology and bees dying out? Is there a correlation between the two? I don't think some people have even given that much thought. Let me read this. Is there a relationship between 5G and bee decline? Yes, there is some concern about a potential relationship between 5G technology and bee decline. While research is needed, some studies suggest that 5G's electromagnetic fields could negatively impact bees, particularly their navigation skills and reproductive abilities. So listen, if these bees can't navigate and find their food source or find their way home, right, to be able to get to to be able to get to their can't get the words out, to be able to get to their nest, okay, we are going to be in some big trouble, man. If bees cannot reproduce either, we are going to be in some big trouble, because if they can't reproduce, it's going to die off. They're going to die out, and it's going to have a knock-on effect for everybody. But what is it about this 5G technology that could be a cause of possible bee decline? What is it? Because this co-pilot seems to be saying, yes, there is a strong concern about a potential relationship between 5G technology and bee decline. Okay? Co-pilot said this. So, YouTube, if you want to pull my video down, realize it's not me that's saying this, okay? This is co-pilot. And co-pilot has done its research. Okay? Let me read on. 5G and honeybees. Separating fact from fiction. The potential impact of 5G and other wireless technologies on honeybees has become a topic of concern and debate in recent years. However, as now there is no conclusive scientific evidence that directly links 5G to negative effect on bee populations. So they're not saying that there isn't any evidence at all, right? Look at the way that they phrase things and the way they slant it. There is no conclusive scientific evidence that directly links 5G to negative effects on bee populations. So they're not saying directly that there isn't a relationship between bees and 5G technology. Okay, there hasn't been enough research for them to make a conclusive decision. Yeah, there hasn't been enough research. Let me read on. Honeybees are known to be sensitive to electromagnetic fields, that's EMFs for short, which they rely on for navigation and communication. Studies have explored the effects of EMFs from various sources, such as cell phones and power lines, on bees. Some of these studies suggest that EMFs could disrupt bee behavior and orientation, potentially leading to negative consequences for their ability to navigate and thrive. 5G technology operates at higher frequencies than previous wireless technologies, and this has sparked concerns about its potential impact on wildlife, including honeybees. So it's not just the bees, other wildlife is considering that 5G may have potential effects on, wildlife, including honeybees. However, the specific effects of 5G on honeybees have not been extensively studied. So they haven't done enough research yet. Okay? But they're not saying, again, that 5G may not be affecting the bee decline. Much of the existing research on EMFs and bees focuses on low frequency EMFs. So they have done studies, right, on EMFs, but with the lower frequency EMFs. But they haven't done it with this 5G technology yet. I wonder why. Leaving a gap in our understanding of how 5G might affect these important issues, I think is meant to say there. All right. So, again, as I'm saying, there is probably a very strong correlation between this 5G technology and the decline in the bee population. Because it's funny, isn't it? Since 2020, how the number of bees is starting to decline. Okay? And we have various different species of bees in the UK. Now, if they start to decline as they are, eventually will they start to die out? Will this 5G technology, which operates very similar to microwave ovens, see, microwave ovens, they cook things from inside out, not as nature intended, not as nature intended, from outside inward. That's how nature cooks things. If you put something on a fire to cook, okay, it tends to cook from the outside inward. But anti-nature cooks from that inside outwards, and it vibrates these molecules in your food. When you put your food in a microwave, right, it starts to vibrate, and the friction, right, when the molecules start to vibrate at speed, at a very high speed, that's what's cooking your food. You're cooking your food via sound. Yes, you just heard me say it. You're cooking your food via sound, the frequency of sound, right? The molecules are speeding up and cooking the food from inside out. 5G technology, they say, operates on a similar frequency to microwaves. So, listen, if bees are starting to decline because they cannot find their way back, they cannot navigate and find their way back to their nest, okay, where they create their honey and stuff. So, if they cannot find their way back home, and also if they're not reproducing, or the reproduction has been slowed down, eventually they are going to die off. Oh, man, we need to start paying attention to nature. I say in nearly every single one of my videos, nature is so important. Nature is so important. You either want this artificial world that they're trying to construct for us, or you want to live in a natural world with natural things, okay? They're starting to make our food genetically modified. They're starting to make all this technology now, right? People's hardly ever going outside now, yeah? They seem to want to be stuck indoors with their phones and with their iPads and with their computers. Get out into nature, vibrate with nature, and be one with nature. Let me tell you this as well. A lot of people probably don't know this. I'll give you this one for free. In actual fact, all my videos I've been giving you so far have been for free, because I've made not 1 cent off of any one of them. But I still continue to push the information out there. And if you want to help me, you can donate to my channel. Go to the bottom of my page to show more, and you can make a donation there. There's some addresses there you can go to and make a donation. I'm not making anything off any of these videos. I'm going to tell you this for free. Do you know that bees make a humming noise, a ohm sound? And it's that ohm sound that a lot of these masters of yoga, okay, these sages, they make the sound of ohm, right? You listen to a bee and it zoom. That ohm makes the same noise, and it's on the same vibration as the universe. Did you hear me? That ohm and that chant noise that a lot of these sages and yoga masters make, that ohm is the same ohm what the bees tend to make. And that is the same sound as the universe. Anyway, this is Elder and Amara. And this is another video. This is part 2 to can we live without bees? And the evidence seems to suggest that we cannot. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. This is Eldad Amara, over and out.